A man of bravery and of huge courage. Not even a small problem with an aeroplane could keep him down. When it crashed on one election day, he pulled himself out, he wiped away the blood, he stood up, he dusted himself down, and he pulled out a fag and lit it. Don't think he's gone away, ladies and gentlemen. He's absolutely here. He is in full campaign mode. Before we welcome him to the stage, let's just remind ourselves of him in action.
It sounds as if you smell betrayal in the air.
For goodness sake, get rid of not just the worst Prime Minister I've ever seen, but perhaps the most dishonest one as well. I'm going to try and get the people to let their members of Parliament know they will not accept being betrayed.
And I tell you what, if I have to do this again, next time, no more Mr. Nice Guy.
We had a referendum. We voted for something. Our politicians should deliver this.
We have made our minds up in the greatest democratic exercise in the history of this country.
I trust the voice of the people more than the politicians.
Please welcome to the stage Nigel Farage.
I've just got back on the Eurostar from Brussels. One of my favourite cities in the world, and a place in which, of course, I am myself immensely popular. But it wasn't me last night that was being abused in Brussels, though I have been for much of the last 20 years. No, the abuse that was going on last night, the arrogance that was going on last night, the bullying that was going on last night, the thuggery that was going on last night was coming from unelected bureaucrats, people like Jean-Claude Juncker treating, and listen, I'm not a fan of Mrs. May. Oh, no. But when she goes abroad, like it or not, she is the leader of our country. And to see her being talked down to by that bunch of gangsters yesterday was a shaming moment for them and for us. In fact, what she really should have done, she should have said, I will not be talked to like this by jumped up foreign bureaucrats, and walked out of the room. What she should have done. And then, in a midnight press conference, Jean-Claude Juncker uses a variety of terms of abuse about the British Prime Minister and her negotiating position, and says that much of her approach has been nebulous. And this morning, did you see the film? She confronted him. She said, you called our approach nebulous. And Jean-Claude Juncker denied it. Well, of course he denied it. It was after a good dinner, wasn't it? But honestly, what we saw was appalling, and we've seen it from the very start. This organisation, this European Union, is not just a fundamentally undemocratic place, it's an anti-democratic place. And you know, we were told by the Remainers in the referendum that a vote to remain meant everything would stay the same. Well, think what has happened since 2016. Hungary have had their voting rights suspended. Poland have had their voting rights suspended. The new, and in my opinion, rather splendid Italian government have had their budget rejected. And now we know that when Nick Clegg, oh, I'm sorry, Sir Nick Clegg, when Sir Nick Clegg told us that it was a dangerous fantasy to imagine there'd be a European army, now the plans are clear. There will be a European army by 2025. Now the plans are clear. They will have foreign policy without veto. They will continue with their programme of expansion, and all over Europe, on the left and the centre and the right, we are seeing new political parties and movements rising up and saying, we wish to be nation states, proud of our identity, our culture, our nationality, and, most important of all, our nation state democracy. Thank goodness we voted leave. But the problem is not all with the bureaucrats. Yes, they have power without accountability, but much of the problem, I'm afraid, lays not with the Remainers. Look, they never accepted the referendum result, did they? They've campaigned from day one, from June the 24th, Tony Blair. Yeah, he's our best asset, really, isn't he? Must admit, the one person I do respect on the other side is Michel Barnier. Because what he's done is to run rings around our useless civil service and a Prime Minister who was a Remainer, and I'm sorry to say, still is a Remainer. She has put together what is the worst deal in history. It isn't just the 39 billion. It isn't just the backstop that could leave us trapped inside the customs union. It's the commitment in many other areas, including security and military, that we will stay closely linked with all the institutions of the European Union. I first saw this with her Florence speech. Because remember, the Lancaster House speech was really rather good, wasn't it? I mean, there I was, hearing a British Prime Minister uttering words and phrases that I'd been abused for using for the previous 2 decades, and suddenly there she was. I thought, wow, maybe we're going to get there. But what we saw at Florence was the Prime Minister of a country who'd spent decades trying to opt out of parts of the European Union, going with a mandate to leave, trying to opt back in to parts of the European Union. And I sensed then, and I wrote and said then, that the great Brexit betrayal had begun. And I would love to think that I was wrong about this, but I don't think I am. The deal clearly is dead. I don't think there are any circumstances that are going to make Sammy Wilson vote for this deal. And nor should he. And nor should he. And 117 Conservative, well, they're not all backbenchers, of course. Some of them are ministers who simply lied about the way in which they voted. Duplicity is not just the Prime Minister's reserve. But it's pretty clear that unless Jeremy Corbyn decided that Labour would rescue the government with this deal is not going to go through. And we can raise half a cheer that this awful deal, this worst deal in history, is not going to go through. But we do, with 15 weeks to go until the day that we're due to leave the European Union, we do actually now face perhaps a pretty clear choice as to what is before us. One choice before us that is laid down in legislation that exists today is that we will leave without a so-called deal and become an independent, self-governing nation that makes its own laws. I mean, no deal, no problem. And I'm really bored with being told by people who've never had a proper job in their lives how much damage it will do to trade. None of them understand the great potential, the opportunity that we have to be freed of the Brussels bureaucracy, to set legislation for our own financial services industry, our own fishing industry. We can be in control of our lives, our destiny, and I tell you what, we'll do a damn sight better job than Mr. Juncker and the gang in Brussels. But the problem is, will this Prime Minister and will this Cabinet that includes people like Philip Hammond, it's great, a new bogeyman, it's great news. Well, I'm getting bored with Blair and Ken Clarke. I've got someone new now, you know. But when you've got the Chancellor of the Exchequer describing 17.4 million people as extremists, and when the vast majority, you look very extreme, sir, I must say. But when you've got a leader, a cabinet, and a parliament like this, we can, if we want, stand here tonight and say, no deal, no problem. We can comfort ourselves that the EU Withdrawal Act is there in legislation. We can look forward to big parties starting at 11 p.m. on the 9th of the 29th of March. We can look forward to it. And by the way, I love Tim Martin, but why he's going on a pub crawl of 100 boozers round Britain and has not invited me, I don't know. Tim, I'm up for it, mate. I'm up for it. We'll start this evening. And we can comfort ourselves with our rhetoric, with our knowledge and our belief in who we are and what we are, and to celebrate that greatest ever democratic exercise in the history of our nation will come to fruition in 15 weeks' time. But I'm afraid, folks, I don't quite see it like that. I don't think that the great Brexit betrayal is anywhere near finished. And I am now more fearful than I've been at any point in this process that, outrageous, monstrous though it is, we're going to finish up being sent back for a second referendum. And I can see the collusion that is going on between Monsieur Barnier and many of our British politicians and many of the multinational businesses, and what last night was all about, actually, why they were so rude to her, why they're now even saying that maybe Article 50 could not be extended. We just need to take the European Court judgment of outright rescinding it, is they know that is impossible for this country to accept. They have managed in the past to engineer second referendums in Denmark. They've done it twice in Ireland. And my message, folks, tonight, as much as I don't want a second referendum, it would be wrong of us here on a Leave Means Leave platform not to get ready, not to prepare for the worst case scenario. You know, we must not fail in our preparation. We really must not do that, because I fear they'll do this to us. Now, if I'm wrong, we've lost nothing. But this organisation, which I joined a few months ago, and which has held these events up and down the country, we've now got to move into a different gear. We've now got to start forming branches and active groups all over this country. We've got to be out there. We've got to re-engage. We've got to re-engage with those millions of people who'd never voted in their lives before, some of whom are now saying to themselves, what was the point of voting? We've got to connect with them and give them hope, and many of them, particularly in the Midlands and the north of England. We have got to become the group that is ready for whatever contingency. And if all our efforts and all our money and all our preparation for whatever may come to nothing because we leave on 11 p.m. on March the 29th next year, then so much the better. But please, folks, can I urge you, can I implore you, let's get ready for every situation. I don't trust this Prime Minister. I don't trust this Cabinet. I don't trust our politicians. I think they will, in the next few months, betray us completely, and let us be ready, not just to fight back, not just to prepare for that referendum, but if it comes, we'll win it next time by a much bigger margin, and that'll be that. All right, done my bit.